The Greek storyteller Aesop once said, "No act of kindness, no matter how small, is ever wasted." On the surface, that seems logical, wise, and well-meaning. However, there are times when kindness, giving, or charity cross over the threshold to enablement, and other times when your charity is siphoned off by middlemen to the point that the intended recipient is left no better off than before you gave a penny at all. When does charity really help? And when is tough love better than unconditional support? We're going to talk about that and more right now. Hi, you're listening to The Fight Coach, The Psychotherapist, and The Gym Momma. FCPGM is a weekly podcast where we discuss important topics that affect you and your family and tips we suggest that might just help you out. On today's episode, we're discussing charity, helping others, and what types of charity only prolongs the problem. As per usual, I'm joined by James White of API Clinics, a psychotherapist well versed in the world of mental health, stress management, and anxiety.
How's it going?
Marlene Griffin, aka The Gym Momma, a parent of 3 and owner-manager of a busy martial arts and fitness gym and a lifelong martial artist.
Hi there.
My name is Mo Griffin. I'm a professional MMA coach with a background in e-learning and engineering. If you'd like to follow along with us using our show notes, you can get them at www.fcpgm. There you'll find links to our Facebook community page, our Twitter feed, and our Discord server. If you'd like to join the conversation and add your experience and feedback, we'd love to hear from you. So, let's begin. So before we start at all, I want to thank everybody for listening and tuning in and for subscribing on our podcast. Our numbers are increasing week on week. And if you guys want to know how you can best support us, then the best way and the easiest way is to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, a 5-star one. No other one will do, really. Just leave us a review, and if you're on there, give us a rating. Tell us what you like about the podcast or recommend it to other people. If you're not subscribed via Apple Podcast, you can get us on podchaser.com. That's a website where you can actually leave podcast reviews without being on the Apple Podcast platform. So if you're tuning in from a computer or if you're on an Android phone, then just visit podchaser.com, find us the FCPGM podcast, and there you can leave a review. Of course, if you're watching on YouTube, you can always give us a thumbs up, drop a comment, or just subscribe to the channel. Those are all great ways to support the podcast, and we appreciate everybody who does that.
Or share it with friends. Share us with friends if you like the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Tell your friends and share the link, please.
So we want to start today's podcast, which is all about charity and whether it really helps or not. And Mar, you're going to kick the ball off with a book review, or what have you got for us?
Well, this in preparation for, I suppose, the charity podcast, I read the most amazing book. It's called Dead Aid by Dambisa Moyo. Now, Dambisa is an incredible person herself. She's an economist. She's got PhDs and she travels the world and everything. And what was surprising is she's from Zimbabwe, and she actually has been educated all the way up to university in Zimbabwe, which is a great credit to a lot of charities that have put schooling and things over there. Her book was an eye-opener for me because not alone the book was all about aid in Africa, but actually reading it, it made me think about a lot of just aid at home, dealing with people even from the gym perspective, how you're helping people. It really opened my eyes. So the whole background to it is that I learned that, the problem in Africa, we'll say the poverty in Africa, is due to centuries of colonization. And then what happens is when they're left, the England or all these countries left the colonies, they actually drained them of all their resources, and they had no infrastructure, and that's why a lot of these countries are in poverty stricken, which was kind of, I suppose I just I don't know whether it was just me being naive at times, thinking that like when you look at the ads that like should they have no water because it's too hot over there, not actually probably taking for granted that we have such a huge infrastructure here that we go to the tap and there's water, but you know, and I thought that they didn't have it because maybe they've no rain over there, but it's not. It's that's not why. So that was kind of a bit of an eye opener for me in that range, and then like she's amazing in that when she in her writing and when she speaks about it, she's very very grateful for all the people because like the book is not knocking people who give to charity. It's about educating people who give to charity because like charity is done, people are very very kind. I mean, Ireland have the greatest nation in the world for helping people when they're when something needs to be done, very very charitable. So it's the intention is all good, but unfortunately we're doing more harm than good, and that's what the book educated me about. And like what it is that if you're giving charity, you need to think of somebody's dignity. So there's like, can you imagine, you know, when we were young giving penny to the black babies and things like that, that there has been $1 trillion donated to Africa in the last 50 years. When we look at the ads, where did that 1 trillion go? And like that's probably what the book was talking about, was about how to teach people maybe what they need to do that would be more helpful, because she explains that there's 3 different types of aid. So you have, we'll say, an aid where there's kind of humanitarian aid because there's a flood and, you know, kind of something, a tsunami, something really tragic, a catastrophe happens, and that's humanitarian aid. Everybody raises as much money as possible to help everybody, and then it's over.
So disaster relief.
Yeah, so that would be one. The NGO aid would be to do with, we'll say, buying that donkey or getting that well, you know, but they're all good, but they're like, it's really like putting like a little plaster over a huge sore, and it's really, it's not, it's too little, and it just will not help, you know, fast enough or in the long term. And then the third one is government to government, and that is the one that Africa is being held back hugely by, because what you have is that you have where governments decide, we'll say China is going to look after one part of Africa, Russia's going to look after the roads maybe in Africa, but what they're doing is we're not giving the people dignity, because it's actually keeping them where they are indefinitely, because government to government means that they don't actually have they're the people who are running their country only have to kind of wine and dine the governments to get the money. So for a country to succeed, and there's 300 years of data of this, for a country to succeed, you need to give them the tools to help themselves. Infrastructure, setting up like, you know, a democratic society, banking, all of these are the necessities. And although, like, you know, you give them, you know, you give them a little bit of help now, but not long term, because what's happening is, if we're here at the moment, we're all going to be saying, oh my goodness, the government didn't do this, that and the other during COVID, so when the election comes around, I'm not voting for him. So the government is kind of going, oh God, I better do something now because such a person, Marlene's not happy there now, she won't give me a vote. But in Africa, government doesn't have to worry about any African. They don't, like, because they don't care whether one of the African their, you know, citizens are not happy, because it's not like they're it's going to make a difference, because they don't have they say, look, lads, you got money there for doing infrastructure there to bring the water, you haven't done it, so you're fired, I'm not voting for you in 5 years, and they get somebody else in. That's gone. They literally have no say in it, and that's, you know, like for an Irish country, we should understand that, because, you know, being under England for all the years, and then kind of, you know, like, we didn't matter. And this is what the aid was doing, that it's actually there and it's making them not matter. There's no accountability of their government, as well as that, because as long as Africa is not is taking so much aid and so much money into the country, then they're not going to be taken seriously in you know, internationally. So they're not, like, I mean, all the other countries, God love them. There was actually a mention of your man Cameron. You know, he was Prime Minister. David Cameron is in England. The day before they were having a summit on aid and everything like that in England. So he was having tea with the Queen the day before the summit, and they didn't know. Well, she reckons the Queen knew because she didn't say a word. But David Cameron was saying, you know, we have this now tomorrow, and she was saying, are there many coming? Oh, and totally corrupt guys coming. You see, and then it got out. And then the president of Africa was there the following day, and he said, oh, I'm sorry. David Cameron kind of went, I'm sorry, like, you know, you heard that. Do you want me to issue an apology? And he said, what good is an apology? He said, because you're right. It's corrupt. And you're aiding them because, you know, all these fellas here now with the limousines and all the big businesses and hotels, you know, they're actually the corruption that's keeping my people down. So he said, keep your apology, sort out the corruption. So it was so kind of compelling, like, to read and kind of think like that, you know, we're so easy to kind of say, like, oh, we're giving to all these charities and thinking we're doing good, when actually the only thing that helps a country come up in the world is trade, having a place at the table and being allowed trade. They're making the comparison because there is a book by the Singapore president. It's called Hard Truths, and he actually speaks how Singapore didn't have this lifelong aid. You know, they got a bit of help, but now look at the difference between Singapore and Rwanda. Totally different scales. And even the Rwandan president was saying, like, you know, like, nobody ever agreed for somebody to come in and be in there indefinitely, deciding what you need, how you're going to do it. And he actually makes the point that, like, nobody should believe that they care more about Africa than the people of Africa. And that is the problem with our charity, that we are deciding this is how your money is going to be spent. It went down. Then, of course, like, corruption is huge because these government people are being paid huge money for not doing their job, and they need to be made accountable, and that is the only way forward for it. The other example that was used was, we'll say, very good intentioned people decide, oh my goodness, all the babies would do with them, you know, those nets around the beds to keep the flies off. Not even getting them made in America or China to ship them over, and there's maybe this small little man, his family, making those nets, and that's their way out of poverty, and now it's wiped out because they're you know, somebody assumed that was what they needed, instead of going in there and talking and seeing. And really, like, I suppose her idea is that like, it would be what would be good for Africa is if everybody said, okay, at the end of 2022 we're going to end all aid to Africa. But between now and then, we're going to pour it in. We need to get the infrastructure. We need that. And then Africa needs to stand on its own. And she said in 10 years' time, Africa would have a fair seat at the table and would be able to kind of come on better. And it's statistically proven. Of course, she got hammered by a couple of people who would have, vested interest in, because I mean, it is a business. There is a business in people setting up charities to a certain degree. So it's not knocking charities, but maybe for me, it made me think about even when you give locally, am I giving for the right reason? Am I helping? Am I aiding people to stay where they are, or am I actually making a difference? And that's what the book woke me up for. It was incredible reading. She's, we're going to have the book, an affiliate link on the show notes for the book, and I absolutely hugely recommend it to everybody because it really is an eye opener. This woman is just absolutely super intelligent, and like, how dare anybody hammer somebody for writing about their country, because somebody over here giving out about her, writing about her country because they think she's come out, she has money now and she doesn't care about Africa, where she said, like, she has actually on the ground knowledge, she has been there, so she should be able to kind of fight for her country without actually somebody thinking that she's not caring for it, because she said nobody can care for it more, as I say, than the people of Africa themselves. So definitely, absolutely woke my, I would have been coming into this charity in a very, very different light only for this book. So absolutely recommend it to you. You should really, really, really do.
Well, I won't be reading it, but I'll get the cliff notes off of some website or some YouTube channel. So, Jimmy, you're going to talk about the psychological aspects of charity and how all that kind of ties together. So what have you got?
Yeah, so while researching for the podcast, there's quite a bit of research that I could find on the beneficial psychological impacts of helping others. And to go through some of them now, there's a couple of research papers out there which are actually trying to do research on, are these actually factual, because there's lots of positive benefits being given from some of the research papers. So some of them are a sense of meaning can be achieved by serving others, which in turn can help reduce stress. If you're volunteering physically, it may involve physical activity, and exercise is obviously known as good for stress. People who take care of others are more likely to take care of themselves by managing their stress levels, consuming different diets, nutritious wise, exercising regularly, and getting plenty of sleep. Now, on that one, I'm personally not so sure about that one, because in my experience, being involved in quite a few different charities throughout my life, that there's a lot of people who volunteer that can actually be affected in a very negative way psychologically from helping in charity or volunteering, in regards to, getting angry or getting frustrated or
carrying emotional baggage,
taking the emotion on themselves in whatever network that they're involved in, whether it be homelessness or about wars or whatever it is. And from an emotional intelligence point of view, that's called emotional distress, where you actually take on the pain even though it's not your pain, and then that can actually have severe mental effects for yourself in a negative way. And I've put in the show notes, there's a Brené Brown does a good one on empathy versus sympathy, so it's worth watching. And then also, when you're involved in giving or helping or supporting others, it's empathy that you need to use, yeah. And Daniel Goleman, another psychologist, and Paul Elkerman, they've defined it into 3 different categories, which is cognitive, emotional, and compassionate. And if you can get that sort of balance right, it'll save you going into the emotional distress. But then there's other claims by other social scientists, researchers, that have identified different ways in how charitable behavior can lead to more benefits. And again, in the show notes, there'll be the papers to read. I'm not going to call them all out because there's loads of them. But even though there's a bit of research out there, it still needs more on it. it's not condensed enough to be able to do a big meta-analysis on it, which would actually prove, okay, there is this benefit for sure. Like, but the research shows that if it's coming from an altruistic point of view, then there is positive benefits for the giver. Now, there's one of the research papers I was looking at suggests that there's 3 different theories of it. So one theory suggests that some individuals give to charity out of altruism, which is a selfless concern for the well-being of others. Mm-hmm. The second theory is called a warm glow, which is that people like making their own decisions to give. So, they derive the pleasure themselves from, similar to, say, if you're rolling a dice yourself, in a card game or whatever, or picking your own lottery numbers. So that's the warm glow effect. And then the third theory proposes that some people take pleasure in charity giving because it's an enhancement of their own social status. So they enjoy being regarded as wealthy or being generous by their peers, that they're helping all the time. Now, obviously, the theory isn't saying that you only are one or the other. You could be a multitude of the 3 of them. You could have 2 of them or 3 of them or whatever. And their message, I suppose, at the end was, look, just give till it feels good, is what they were saying, so you can get the benefit of it. The surprising thing when I was researching on it was there was little or no research that I could find on the psychological impacts of those who are in the need of help. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Yeah, I was about to say that. Everything that you talked about so far is all about the person who's giving.
Yeah, and there was, like, I really, really, like, obviously, since the last podcast, I've been researching, and I couldn't find it, no matter all the different types of searches I put in. But from my experience, both working and being involved in like 3 or 4 different charities throughout my lifetime, and working with individual people as I work with from a mental health aspect, I would find that the following are probably some impacts that affect the people that are looking for charity. So asking for help can make people feel uneasy, because it's like surrendering control to somebody else.
Yeah.
Fear of being looked at as being needy and obviously looking for something. Feeling ashamed, feeling maybe incompetent or not good enough, feeling afraid of being rejected, shame, embarrassment, feeling weak, feeling that you don't deserve it, and not feeling you're good enough. And, if you look at it from my point of view in the area of work that I'm in, no matter who it is, if you're facing a personal crisis and you need help, or you just need to spend time with you, and we've talked about this before, having your team, as in your tribe or whatever, those relationships actually play a critical role in how you function from a day-to-day basis. So if you're sitting on the side of the street with a cup begging because you're homeless, and people are ridiculing you or spitting on you, or even the people who are just throwing you money and walking away, there's no social interaction, there's no communication. That's got to be really, really demeaning to yourself, even though the position you're in isn't great. Now, during the research, I came across this psychologist called Dr. Marlo Archer, okay? And her saying is similar to what you were saying, what that girl is saying about teaching people to learn and whatever. So, like that, give a fish, and she's put it, give a man a fish every day and you'll need to feed him for a lifetime, which is probably similar message to what that girl is saying, okay? Now, she's got some interesting concepts on it, so I'm not going to through them all. It's in the show notes. Have a read through it, see what you think. But one of the points that she puts on is you should discontinue charity rather quickly and move right into help instead, because help differs from charity, and there are expectations. What you're offering is education assistance, preventative measures, or some other gift that will allow the victim to alleviate him or herself to the status of survivor rather than staying in the victim role, which is fine, and I probably agree with quite a lot of what she says. But for me, I suppose there is one exception to the rule, and again, because of my involvement in different charities, and that's where, there's these specific organisations who aren't maybe getting massive funding and solely depend on you giving a $5 or a $10 to keep their doors open, because they're providing a good platform for caring for people or whatever it is. you know, the Samaritans, cancer care centres, all of those small charities that aren't, say, national charities, where national charities get a massive amount of funding. These smaller charities that are on everybody's doorstep, you know, Cork, Kerry, all around the country, they need cash donations to keep their doors open and pay the bills. Do you know what I mean? So I suppose it's looking at being careful where your money's going and how it's being used, and ensuring that maybe it's not greasing other people's pockets, you know, like you were saying.
Well, I suppose like everything that you're saying there, it's kind of similar to what Dambisa is saying. It's about giving dignity, and like it's not, you know, like I mean, I'm a fierce advocate for helping anybody charity-wise, money if I have it, and things like that. But I don't think that I think it is very, very hard for somebody to take charity, particularly money. I think it's very difficult for them. And it is like, if you're down in your luck, it's sometimes you don't really want somebody to fix it, but you might want somebody to maybe listen to you and talk with you, like you'd say, instead of giving money all the time, maybe have a chat and ask what their story is. And, you know, and you might say, you know what, now I knew somebody and they did such a thing. And you give information, the same as when people come into the gym. Like, you can't fix everything. You can only help them help them in a direction that you show what you could do that might be of help, and they make a decision. So I think it's very hard, like where people, you know, some people will say to you, oh, you shouldn't give it to somebody begging on the street, because they're going to go away and they're going to give it, going to buy drink or drugs. And then you're kind of going, but actually that's not really what charity is about. That's not, you give it from your heart, you know.
But I do think there's, if you want to break it into two different sections, so there's people who fall down on their luck and need help, and then there's people who are in the addiction circle, which unfortunately, through to the addiction, they have their morals are gone. Do you know what I mean? So even though they feel down and embarrassed and stuff, they have no other choice. Whereas the person who isn't in the addiction circles, let's say, for instance, somebody who's, you know, lost their job or something like that, and, you know, there's loads of good charities out there like Feed Cork and stuff like that, but they probably wouldn't get in their car and drive to Feed Cork to get to ask for a handout, because inside it's going against everything that they've been brought up for. Do you know what I mean? About standing on yourself. So there's sort of two different realms of it.
I think, but I think that, like, you know, it's I think the word charity is you know, I mean, like, if we were all honest over the years, we won't have said we got charity, but we did get a help, we did get an aid, a help up. And we don't want to be reminded of that all the time, or we don't need to have that. You know, you know, it's about, like, maybe paying it forward. You got help today, so then that makes me stronger, so I can help somebody else tomorrow. And that's you know, that's really, and giving. It's not all about money.
But I think if you want to boil down, because there's loads of different definitions of charity, right? And it's probably the act of giving help to those in need. It's like you said earlier on, it's a humanitarian act, and it involves either giving goods or giving time or giving money or giving support or giving effort to those who need it. But it's done without the expectation of something in return.
And you know what I found as well was kind of interesting, even when it came to the Africa, and I think it probably happens here as well, that sometimes, you know, some of the aid, the government aid and all of these things, what happens is that it's only feeding maybe something, a big debt that's owed by the country. So, do you know, the same thing, even if you that would happen locally, if somebody is up to their neck in debt with their mortgage, and whatever money you're going to give them, it's only paying the debt, so it's not actually kind of helping either. So sometimes it's not, it's kind of a bottomless pit for thinking that money is going to sort everything. Sometimes it's a bit of, like, you know, where when it comes to Africa, it'd be great if they could kind of say, look, leave that debt there over there, forget about that, get yourself on your feet and then pay it forward, or do it at a later date. But some of their money is actually servicing a debt, which is, and that'll happen a lot of people on the street as well.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. But I think the other thing that you the other thing about what you said earlier on, which is about from a supporting point of view, and that we've all had it through our life. If you go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is, as a human species, we need interaction with other people, and how we got to where we are now was by all working together and supporting each other. So that's where it's come from. Do you know what I mean? So it's in our DNA to do it.
Yeah.
And what you found out some stuff yourself, did you, Liam?
So, yeah, I've been very quiet over here for the...
You have, yeah. Come on.
So what I want to talk about, right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about non-monetary charity for a bit, right, because you've been talking about aid in Africa, and Jimmy, you've been talking about the local charities and what have you, but we actually have things that we give charitably that cost no money at all, and I'm talking specifically about appeasement, forgiveness, help, and time. Now, they sound very airy-fairy, but let me kind of break it down a small bit, right? So these are all things that we give freely every day to friends, family, acquaintances, and strangers, and mostly we never even give it a second thought. Just like charity is given absent-mindedly to inefficient or nefarious so-called charities, you could be doing more harm than good by giving up non-monetary things. So we talked about, like we say, if you throw in a few quid to the troker box, you assume that the black babies are going to be fed, or this well is going to be built and everybody will have water. But in actual fact, it's just greasing the palms of warlords and other people like that. That's one side of it. But we're also doing that same thing with non-monetary stuff with our own relationships every single day. So broadly speaking, I'm talking about the concept of enabling. And this is most synonymous with addiction, but crosses over to our relationships. And one particular talk that I looked at from a Dr. Ramani, she talks about enabling toxic relationships. So what are toxic relationships? It's basically fueling the dickheads in your life, right? The people who are completely self-absorbed, complete tosspots, assholes, whatever you want to call them, right? In Ireland, we call them Mayfainers, langers, or people who suffer from ME. It's all about me. So this could be someone who has no consideration for anyone else's time, opinions, money, or life. And if you think about it, we all have people like this in our lives.
Yeah.
They might be family members, they might be our own kids, they might be relations, or even people that you just follow on social media. So they might not be specifically physically entangled in your life, but they take up a lot of your mental space. And of course, social media is the safe haven for narcissists and assholes anyway. So we're going to be surrounded by them. Now, not every person is defined in their life by their actions once in a while. So if somebody is an asshole today, that doesn't mean that they're an asshole full stop, right? But people have different times where they do something that's not desirable, and then if we react in a certain way, we're actually going to fuel that so that they repeat that behavior over and over. And that's the act of enablement. Mm-hmm. So if somebody does something that you don't want to happen again, and you act in a certain way, they could be emboldened to do it again and again and again, and you're feeding into that. All right. So things like, so this is all from the talk from Dr. Ramani, and I have the video linked in the show notes. So I definitely encourage you to go and watch it yourself. You might even have a different take on it than I came away with, but this is what I've got. Okay. So things that enable toxic relationships is giving second chances, or saying they didn't mean it, they'll learn from it. When it comes to a narcissist or an asshole or somebody who is constantly doing things like this, they view silence as permission, right? So this is the thing that we have to really kind of wrap our heads around. Silence is permission. If you don't nip it in the bud, you're empowering somebody to continue in that direction. So even if somebody does something a little bit asshole-like today, and you let that slide, tomorrow it'll be slightly bigger, the next day it'll be slightly bigger. And if you do that for 3 or 4 people in your lives, and then another gang of people outside that circle, and then another gang, and suddenly you're looking at an entire society that's full of assholes, because nobody is pulling
challenged,
people on
like,
it.
yeah.
Nobody's being challenged. The thing about challenging an asshole is that it doesn't work. So if you say to somebody, so let's say somebody has taken advantage of your time. If you say that to a reasonable person, you say, look, you were late for me there, and I could have been doing something with my time. That was an asshole thing to do. Somebody who's reasonable will say, Jesus, I'm sorry about that. That won't happen again. An asshole won't. They'll say, I get over it. Sure, I was only 5 minutes late. Right? So challenging an asshole on something like that doesn't really work. What does work is something that detracts from their life. Okay, so ideally monetary, time-wise, or something to do with their freedoms. So in other words, you'd like to lock them up in a prison cell, right? But we don't have the power of that. We're not a government. We're not. So there's a lot of stuff there that we would love to be able to reprimand somebody and issue a consequence, but we don't have the power of fining them or giving them a conviction on their record or whatever. But what you can control is the attention that you give them. You can control how much of that affects you and your life, and how much that it's eroding your boundaries. So it's a very, very interesting talk about enablement, but that is all based on people being charitable with their time with their appeasement.
Or their talent.
Yeah, all of those things. So it's just another way of looking at charity. She mentions a couple of times sometimes that we view confidence. So if you think of an asshole, they're usually kind of like brash and arrogant and cock at the walk. And as a society, we've been conditioned to view confidence as wisdom, entitlement as confidence, and abrasiveness as aggression. Or sorry, not aggression, as assertiveness. So as a society, the asshole actually stands out and becomes a leader. So we have a lot of social media gurus who actually are quite narcissistic in their behavior, and yet we feed into them by following them and by giving them shares and likes and all of this. So it's just it's kind of upside down at the moment, and you feel that you don't have any power over it, but we actually all have the power to sort out the narcissists in our own lives. So start one at a time and one engagement at a time, and just kind of flip it on its head and let it build from there.
But like in that whole conversation that you've just had, it's covered some of the other podcasts that we've done, which is boundaries, talking about emotions, and difficult conversations. So, and it is about, that's all in the realm of the emotional intelligence, which is about self-awareness. So it's being aware of what's going on for you, how it's making you feel, and then not standing for it. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to confront it in a bullying way either, like, do you know what I mean? But you do have to make a decision to say, okay, that's not good. How can I address this situation, and what can I do or say? And consequences is the big thing. That's the whole, even go back to say when there was loads of consequences when we were younger for different things that aren't there now. Do you know what I mean?
You get a clip across the ear, or
and people will say it was a bad thing, people will say it was a good thing. I'm not even going into that realm of that conversation, but there was consequences. Now there's, as you said, it's very hard to have that consequence. It's the only consequence you have.
Yeah, you can't even punch someone in the face anymore. Like, these keyboard warriors are getting away with murder because nobody can slap them in the face. I mean, if you said to somebody even half of what goes on Twitter these days, if you said it to somebody 40 years ago, you'd get smacked upside the head and you'd be unconscious on the floor and everybody would be laughing at you, and then you would never say that again. Whereas now there's no consequences for keyboard warriors these days.
Yeah, and it's all, as you say, it's all kind of the conversation we're having today is about charity, and actually I suppose that's what we're trying to define, like that charity isn't just the money to Africa, isn't the money to whatever local charity. Charity is the time you're giving, because if you could actually not give it to somebody who doesn't appreciate it or doesn't, it's making them, you're aiding them to be not a nice person, well then it would be much more charitable not to give them that time for their sake, and then use it for somebody who would actually gain from that. charitable time or
And the economics of it would teach that person that, oh, I'm not getting any attention when I'm an asshole, but if I'm nice, I get more attention.
Yeah.
Therefore, you create more love in the world.
But that
And I know
comes
that's
down to
airy-fairy, but...
well, it's
No,
not
it's not
because that's the
because-
truth of it. That's what the Dalai Lama would say. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And anybody in that realm of
Yeah,
that
but he's
field.
definitely airy-fairy.
Well,
Yeah.
he's a Buddhist. Do you know what I mean? That's his belief. But like, if
But
you
it's-
think about it, logically, when you feel, you know, respected, cared for, supported,
you give more.
you give more. Do you know what I mean? When the people in your in your circle, once you start growing up and start learning more about yourself, your circle tightens, and you find that the majority of people in your circle are people that are like you. So you say, on a daily basis, we give our time without even thinking about it, blah blah blah. That's because the people that we're giving it to, we don't have an expectation from them. We feel good doing it, and we know what it's like to get helped, so we like helping others. Do you know what I mean?
And I think that's kind of it kind of hits the nail on the head, you know. Since I was very young, when I was at school, I had Mary-O was the manager. And she was an incredible woman and still is. I think she's nearly 100 now, and she's sharp as a pin. And she always told me, like, you know, Liam will love this one. But that when I'd walk down from school from Skullborough over Patrick's Bridge, there's somebody sitting down there. I was to give them something or say hello and be nice, because that was actually Holy God in disguise. Now for me, I can't.
What a load of shite.
Yeah, but I can't. But like at the same time, I suppose like what it is that like it was her way of teaching us to be thoughtful. I mean, whether you agree with the way she phrased it or not, it actually gave me an appreciation, maybe a way of looking at it. We talk there now where we were saying even during the week about, you know, you can't tell people what to do, or about climate change, you have to show how it affects them. So that actually, I thought she was actually quite clever, because that's what she did. She made it all back at me, that if I wasn't going to pass, I was the one that was going to, you know, so it made it real for me in a way. And I think that, you know, even when you're looking at kids, you know, kind of when you're with kids, kind of teaching kids growing up, and that, you know, you ignore them when you know, you ignore bad behaviour, because if you actually go along and you start spending loads of time when they're acting bold, then I think that's the way to get attention. So it's all about like parents kind of maybe making a fuss out of a child that does something good. Then that's what teaches them, and that's kind of a little bit of what you're saying in and then we should carry that on to life. And you know, when we're giving on the street, we should give because it makes us feel good. We feel we're helping somebody, and then what they do with it is really irrelevant, unless it definitely affects us. That's where we'd have to think. So if we give money to somebody there and they get drunk and then they hit, you know, maybe they have a fight with somebody, maybe that's enabling. But you know, we have to give people the benefit of the doubt, unless, you know, it's not like we can't look at somebody. I think it's very hard for anybody to actually beg on the street. So, you know, there has to be a little bit of balance in that, and you can you know, but there is so much to think about. And
but
I
even
think
on
we
the
don't.
respect of what you were saying about that girl, that lady that wrote the book, and saying how Africa can come out of this if we stop enabling. Yeah. It's the same with the guy in the street. It's about the system. It's about changing the system. Do you know what I mean? And working the system that, you know, takes them from where they are, comes back to education, like you were saying. Do you know what I mean? It is about education, and it is about starting at kids. If we can start at the kids' level, then by the time they get to ours, hopefully they would make a massive change. Do you know what I mean? Compared to the way we were brought up, do you know what I mean? And conditioned and stuff like that. So we're very responsible ourselves as a species ourselves. Do you know what I mean? We've done this to ourselves, like.
And
So
I think sometimes it's just that it's so easy just to kind of maybe give to charity and not think about it. And maybe we all need to kind of maybe stop and just really realise from the smallest little thing that we do each day, does it help or does it not help somebody?
Yeah.
In whatever way.
So there's a guy called Dave Ramsey, right? Now, this dude, I probably would punch him in the face if I met him in reality, but
They're very violent today.
I just feel violent. I imagine this guy's a Trump supporter, right? He's comes across as kind of an old school conservative, tough and gritty, right? Kind of a hard ass. But he has a very, very good video on love versus enabling. And again, I have the link in the show notes. And he's talking about the whole dealing with family members who need help, right? Now, he specifically talks about, we say, parents who home their kids until they're into their 40s, living in the basement, and they basically never grow up. Or parents bringing kids back into the house after they've had a disaster in their own lives, and then they're stuck there and they never get back on their own feet. Kind of that type of thing, right? So it's enabling around the kind of family dynamic. And he said that you're either offering a safety net or a hammock. Effectively, they're the same thing, but one is comfortable to sleep in forever, and the other one is like it catches you, and then you're uncomfortable and you need to move on. And then he talks about like that real love is helping somebody to move on, not just pitying them. Okay, and he said that. So this is the true conservative in him says, enablers are sweet people, but they're weak. They don't love well. And he talks about loving well as controlling the environment in such a way that, okay, you can catch somebody when they fall, but you set up rules and parameters and conditions that while I'm helping you, you're attending this meeting, or you're budgeting this way, or you spend money on what I say and nothing else, and you don't do this and you do that, and then at a certain stage, piss off out of my house because you need to fly your own path, you know? So a very, very hard ass, different kind of approach altogether, but I mean, it's like we always have to challenge our own kind of methods of thinking, and it's a good one. But here's what it is, we want to bring it back to our, like what it is that we are here, we're a gym, right? And how does this affect us? And right, and it's particular to us. One situation that pops up all the time, and I could talk about this because these guys are not listening anyway. They don't listen to the FCPGM. But young teens, particularly in a transition towards adulthood. So this is the time when they start to earn their own money, and they stop getting stuff paid for by their parents. And in particular for us, the gym membership is one of those things, right? Now, they're in the transition where a loving parent has for the very longest time budgeted on their behalf and made sure that they invested in things that absolutely helped their child to grow and get better. And the child is going to go along with that because it's not their money, and
you're probably
to
doing
them,
something that they wanted to do anyway.
Yeah, and to them, a gym membership is free. It always has been. They never even worried about where it was coming from, how it was spent, how much it was. A lot of teens that get to their adulthood are don't even know how much their membership is, right? Now at 18 or 19 years old, they get a job, and the parents say to them, okay, step one, pay your own membership. And now the teen is looking at their options. I could pay my gym membership, or I could go on a night out with my friends, or I could buy some Nike Air Max, or I could get Sky TV put into my bedroom. Right? And then oftentimes, they'll go and do one of those things and then realize that they don't have the money for their gym membership at the end of the month. Right? And then they come to us and they say, right, I can't afford my membership. And you're looking at them with their brand new Nike Air Max, and they're talking about what they watched on. And they've got all the mod cons and everything like that. And you know, as an adult, that they've just
made a wrong decision.
They've prioritized, I need Sky TV, and membership is not important to me. Now is the crux of the matter. We, as coaches and gym managers and business owners, are at the point where we're choosing between charity or love. We're at the crossroads of boundaries and enabling, and we're faced with the dilemma of the hammock versus the safety net. And oftentimes we're like, I'm the softie that would say, look, they'll be grand, eventually they'll have their money, and sure, God love them, and this, that and the other. And normally it's you two guys that are the hard asses that will say, right, no, fuck it, they're out of here unless they can pay their membership. And of course that's the right thing to do. It's just I need to learn from that. But this is a kind of a case in point, or a case study for what the charity versus enabling thing is all about. So yeah, that's what I found anyway.
Yeah, because it's definitely, especially where when you talk about the gym membership and things like that. I mean, you do want to. You. It's hard because you have a loyalty to a parent who has invested so much in them. As a gym, we've invested so much in them, but sometimes it's not about the money. It's about a lesson that they need to learn, and if they don't learn it, then actually we're not doing them any favors. It's
We're creating a narcissist and sending them out into the world.
Exactly, and they think they can storm around and they pick and choose, and they still have the idea that they want to be a fighter, and they just have no value on it. And it is, and in the long run, where it's different, if they have to, like everything else, if they have to work for it, it means more, and they train more, and they appreciate it more. So all in the long run, they actually become better people at what they're training at, because they want to be there, and at the person realizing what's worth investing in. So yeah, no, that's a very good one. Good. Well, I'm proud of you now, Liam.
But it comes into different fields. It's in my field too. You know, if you're helping, if I'm giving somebody a dig out because they're tight for money and I'm doing it for free or something like that, at some stage they have to do, like, all in all realms of the work I do, they have to help themselves. I'm just there to support and guide and whatever, yeah. But when there's an expectation that it's free or it should be free or something like that, then the investment is different. It's a different level, do you know what I mean, of investment. And then, do you know, there can be that expectation is, oh, okay, like the gym membership, sure, they're grand, I can get in here for free or something like that, do you know what I mean, I'm going to buy my air Nike Max or something. Then in the realm of air work, the investment from the person can be so little that they're not doing the work and they're expecting you to do it. And that then...
Well, if they're not paying for it, what happens is they can they don't, it's not like, oh, I paid for that, so I better go and do the work because I'm wasting my money. When they're not paying for it, they actually are becoming haphazard about putting the time in themselves and the work, whether it's training or whether it's work to help them through in your line of work. So it's just like it is like, and that's probably a very hard lesson to learn. But
it is tough.
But it's tough. It's tough. It's I suppose sometimes I feel that like it's like my first part is myself being put in that position to actually have to say no. You know, you do all this talking, and then the first part of the is being in that position in the first place. Why did I get there? That I'm considered the one that is the soft touch that whatever. So it's a learning curve for everybody, whether you're on the part giving the charity, taking the charity. It's a fantastic subject.
Yeah,
we could go on for hours.
Well, we won't go on for hours because we're nearly gone on an hour. And at this stage, we're going to issue our challenges. So we don't have top tips this week. We have challenges. And our challenges are thought-provoking more than anything else. You don't have to share it on Instagram or send us a book report, or you don't have to do anything physical with it. You don't even have to listen to it if you don't want to. That's completely up to you. But we would like to kind of lay down the gauntlet a little bit. So we each have one challenge. Who'd like to go first?
Well, I'm going to start because I'm going to say the challenge I'm going to set is I would like you to read Dambisa Moyo's book. It'll be in the show notes with an affiliate link, so you're helping the show by buying the book for the few cents that will be thrown over there. But actually, I think it's a real wake-up call for everybody with a view to abroad and here. So I can't stress enough how much I think the book will be of benefit for everybody if they would read it.
Cool. My challenge is, if you are already giving to a charity, just have a bit of reflection time and just have a look and see, are you helping or supporting them, or are you enabling them? And if you're enabling them, is there any way you can help instead of enabling? And if you're not giving to charity or anything like that, then just have a look around and perhaps see if there's anyone that you know around you that may need support or help in some way. not necessarily money, just time or whatever, or a listening ear? Or is there any other place out there where you can actually help and make a difference?
Cool. So my one is, I've written it down, so I'm just going to read it. So take the time this week to notice who you're being charitable with, in particular with your attention. Find the May feiner that eats into your time, whether that be a physical acquaintance or a social media personality. Then find a way to starve them of limelight and instead give that time to someone who's exhibiting behaviours that you want to see more of. That's my challenge. So you've got 3 different challenges there. Pick one, pick 3, do them all, do none. It's completely up to you. So Mar, have you got a quote of the week for us?
I have indeed, and the quote of the week is from a kind of an ex-military guy who's now got into psychology and giving a lot of powerful talks around the world. His name is Dr. Steve Maraboyle, and the quote he has is, "Help people help themselves. Don't judge, just help. In this process, be cautious to simply point them in the right direction and help them get moving. Don't make your journey theirs, nor make their journey yours."
Cool. Kind of sums up everything we were talking about anyway. So there you go, guys. We are out of time for this week. But before we do that, if people want to find you, Mar, where are they going to find you or get in touch?
Yeah, actually, I did have everything changed.
Okay.
So everything is across all the Insta and Facebook and everything. It's Marlene Griffin, and it's the Gym Momma, SPG. So you'll find me on Instagram, on Twitter, and on Facebook.
Jimmy, where are we going to find you?
API Clinic without an S on Facebook.
Right, you can find me at Liam OG Griffin on Twitter, Insta, or Facebook. And anything to do with the podcast is at www.fcpgm.com. Guys, that's been our show for the week. We hope you've all enjoyed. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share, do all that good stuff. And until next time, take care of yourselves and take care of someone else that needs charity.